And now is the time for Dr. Ioannis Panagiotopoulos, who, due to a serious bronchitis, uh, will present us a video instead of talking himself. So, uh, please, Dr. Panagiotopoulos, you can start your video.
First of all, I would like to thank the ACA for the invitation to participate in this very important conference, and especially Mr. Giorgos Psathas. Dear friends, a new European architecture, known as the New European Bauhaus, is about improving our daily lives, focusing on better living together in more beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive places. It is about bridging global challenges with local solutions to achieve our climate targets and support a broader transformation on the ground. A triangle of three inseparable values guide the new European Bauhaus. First, subdimensionality, from climate goals to circularity, zero pollution, and biodiversity. Aesthetics, quality of experience and style beyond functionality. And third, inclusion, valorizing diversity, equality for all, accessibility, and affordability. Inclusive society is a society for all, a society in which every individual has an active role to play. The crucial question is if an inclusive society can be based on respect for all human rights and fundamental freedoms, cultural and religious diversity, social justice, and the special needs of vulnerable and disadvantaged groups. Francis Fukuyama accepts that Plato had a better understanding to human nature than Rousseau. The answers of the learned metropolitan of Athens, Michail Choniatis, have a timeless value, which reaches to this day. The timeless value of all today, these answers reach an interesting contemporary dialogue between history and future. According to the United Nations, the social inclusion is understood as a process by which efforts are made to ensure equal opportunities for all, regardless of their background, so that they can achieve their full potential in life. It's a multi-dimensional process aimed at creating conditions which enable full and active participation for every member of the society in all aspects of life, inclusive civic, social, economic, and political activities, as well as participation in decision-making processes. But is the question of inclusive society possible? Could we have one look for corresponding historical realities from the past of our city, of Athens? Professor Stephanos Ευθυμιάδης very aptly observes that the conditions for such a dialogue were developed in our city. He notes that a new era for the city, an era which began with the conversion of the Parthenon into a Christian church, as a matter of fact, in the courses of time, this church, dedicated to the Virgin Mary, became a significant shrine that must have attracted the attention of people well beyond the confines of Attica. Anthony Kalvelis has adduced powerful evidence that the Athenotissa church was a prominent pilgrimage site, known far and wide and inspiring the highest peaks of Christian devotion. According to the same scholar as the Christian shrine of the Mother of God, venerated by emperors, monks, and pilgrims from all over Christendom. The Parthenon displayed a uniquely divine light that somehow united the Christian tradition and Greek legacy. It's on this divine life of Athens that he duly consecrates in the final chapter of his book on the Christian Parthenon, the Christian appropriation of the pagan Parthenon and the Christian rehabilitation of the city itself. As a matter of fact, by the end of the 12th century, not only did Athens find redemption in the writings of important orators such as Eustathius of Thessaloniki and Michail Choniatis, but it came to be understood in fully idealized terms as a place of theophany linking to Mount Sinai. This is the culmination of what we term the literary process of redeeming Athens and absolving it from its pagan guilt. It's the final step of the ascent of ladder that was implicit in Christian literature long before the 12th century, namely in the transitional period from the end of late antiquity to the first centuries of the Middle Byzantine period. The meeting of Christian faith and Hellenistic philosophy had already been prepared by the earlier spiritual meeting of Hellenism with the later Judaism. This relation was not certainly a simple external connection of two independent spiritual figures, but is centered on the interpretation of the Christian theology for the relation of God, man, and world. The tendency for a wider use of the classical Greek heritage had also a permanent stimulus in the spiritual ferment of the Christian communities of the Greco-Roman world. The dialectical relationship of Christianity to Hellenism was gradual, executive, and reciprocal. It was a gradual dialogue with the Stoic philosophy until the middle of the 2nd century, the Neoplatonism from the middle of the 2nd century, and the Aristotelianism to Antiochian school from the beginning of the 3rd century. It was also eclectic, because to Greek philosophy on the starting point was deeply connected with the content of the pagan, national according to the sources religion. The metaphysical contemplation of Greek philosophy had developed in the context of intellectual dialectical ratiocination. On the other hand, the Christian theology was based on the divine revelation and was unfolded in the context of evidential reasoning approach. Also, it was reciprocal because the meeting was an activation of the process of modular assimilation of elements. This affects the deeper functions of balanced composition with the elements which was chosen and was excluded. Anthropology and cosmology adopted from Hellenism. They organically integrated into the spirit of the Christian teaching on the relationship between God, man, and the world. Christian theology respected their special content, but with absolute reference to the teaching of Christianity on their relation to the Creator. Christian replaced the philosophical metaphysical question and its historical pagan religious conjugations with the content of Christian revelation and theology. Christianity rejected the metaphysical theology of the Greek philosophy. The content of the Christian revelation covered the classical Greek intellectual ratiocination, with retained in the fields of anthropology and cosmology, which in the turn passed with values from Hellenism to Christianity. These criteria were applied with wonderful community and consistency by the patristic tradition. They are clearly defined to the limits and the content of the composition as it was reflected in all aspects to the spiritual life of the Byzantine tradition. The anthropological model, the ideal model of the Christian man, is a synthesis of the beautiful and the holy. The beautiful of classical Greek antiquity took on the new spiritual dimension in its connection with the saint of the Christian interpretation of the relationship between God, man, and world. The Christian teaching on the relation of man by God as in the image and likeness of God, and the words as very good, profoundly influenced the whole perspective of the Greek anthropology and cosmology with the theocentric criterion of the Christian faith. The teaching about the incarnation of the Son and the Word of God sealed the entire content of this composition and was the immovable basis for the development not only of a complete system of Greco-Christian anthropology, but also a concentrated Christian cosmology. When Ioannis arrived in Athens in the end of the 11th century, his Christian faith was infused with the ideals of classical antiquity, philosophical and moral, Because of his classical training, he has idealized Athens in his mind and was unprepared for that he found. For him, the modern city was a ruin, redeemed in comparison to classical antiquity only by its faith, which the ancient has not known, but Hillsong knew that this own nation, while Christian, paled at crucial ways in comparison to the ancient Greeks. His letters and orations are the only works we have from the hand of a Byzantine bishop of Athens. He cared for his flock, did all his power to improve their material and spiritual circumstances, and loved, if not the actual city itself, at least the idea of that city. Yet, the one thing he loved most about in his fortunate possessfully, and this was the Parthenon, his cathedral, which brought together into one place his faith and the ancient virtues he so admired. The best of both worlds. The monument was a conduit between the two poles of Choniatis' moral existence, the Hellenic and the Christian. Choniatis emphatically noted that how could we deem 5 livable who are appointed to live in this valley of tears? The majesty of this once noble city is not only a name, in fact a ruin, and the once fertile earth of reason and literature is a ground of tears and groans. Time and envy have managed to crush it so far that it has been deprived on its former manlines, literature, and the rest of virtue. Good things have deep been upturned from the earth itself, and the Attica has become a field of devastation. Gardens lack rivers, orchards lack fountains, Kalliroi has no stream, Mount Imitos no beehives, and flocks have no grass. The sky is of bronze, this earth of iron, such wakes of sinners received from God. He have no rain at all. As truth he had set up our dwellings of torrid zone. He would not even call us desiccated. The once golden zone is no longer golden, or does it agree of the Athenian with myth, as it is not blessed with the fantasy, but has become dry and squinzy, this poor man with sorrow, allowing no liquid bulb of drip down. As for Marathon and LFCs, the former has haste to produce wheat just as it has rather in ancient trophies, while an intense famine has taken over the hand. The latter has become unspeakable, full of deep silence, in a new way, in spirits attack it and lead their captives to the inner champs of Hades and initiate that in the mysteries of death. There is one consolation in all this, and one cause to creep alone, namely to grace that permeates and illuminates the temple of the Mother of God. I liken this to a pillar of fire, a cloud cutting the through of whiteness, and, as David says, a tent that hides me in the day of my evils, a commanding point of divine vision that makes clear that the miracle of the burning boughs and the greatest of all, the Acropolis of heaven that lifts up to the third heaven the one who is afraid to escape. Metropolitan of Athens, Michael Ioannis, is the first known worshipper of the Parthenon, and described in details its function as a Christian temple. It was a custom that meant no destruction of the pagan relics, but their rescue. Gregory of Nyssus, in the life of Saint Gregory of Waterworker, described in detail the transition from the pagan temple to a Christian one. This was an acceptable development, and we have only one account of the destruction of the pagan temple by the max devotees of the Arianism. So we have an example on inclusive society. But the problem today is the way of think of diversity when we think on the history of modern Greece. Some they think that there is a trend to be an image on ethnically singular nation, the Greeks, who fought the independence from the large empire of the Ottoman 200 years ago to found their own country. This image obscured the fascinating variety of traditions, languages, religions, and identities and came to make up the modern Greek nation. The land that they won the original independence were less than the half of the size of Greece today. New territories were slowly added for more than a century, each nation and island bringing with his own tradition and background. And they give examples from Thessaloniki today, Greeks to second larger city, which at the age of 19, the majority of the was Jewish. On that, in 1923, nearly 20% of Greece's population was made up of refugees who arrived from Asia Minor as a result of the Treaty of Lausanne and the Treaty of Lausanne, and they use many other examples of deficient historical coverage. Can it be, however, this guide to understanding inclusive society? No, this is not the way to understand and consolidate inclusive society, because it's a process by which efforts are made to ensure equal opportunities for all, regardless of their background. The reality of our city is that everybody can achieve full potential in his life, and we give multi-dimensional opportunities that creating conditions which enable full and active participation of every member of the society in all aspects of life, inclusive civic, social, economic and political activities, as well as participation in decision-making process. Therefore, the example of the Parthenon is sufficient as its different use yesterday and today confirms the evolution and dynamics of our society. Thank you.